Welcome. Tonight, we journey together across the vast steppes of Central Asia to a time when survival meant constant movement, when the wind carried both life and death across endless grasslands, and when the rhythm of existence was measured not in hours or days, but in seasons and migrations. You are settling in now, allowing yourself to relax. There is no need to follow every word. Let your mind wander as it wishes. The past we explore tonight is distant, separated from your comfort by 8 centuries and thousands of miles. You are safe, warm, and still. Tonight, we will step into the felt tents of Mongol herders in the 12th and 13th centuries. We will follow the unification of scattered tribes under one man's vision. We will examine the mechanisms of conquest that reshaped the known world. And we will glimpse the unexpected sophistication that emerged from the harshest of beginnings. But for now, simply breathe. Let the details wash over you gently, like wind across tall grass. The story begins not with drama, but with the quiet, relentless struggle of daily life on the steppes. Imagine yourself waking before dawn in the 12th century, somewhere on the Mongolian plateau. The first sensation is cold. Not the crisp, invigorating cold of a winter morning in a heated home, but a deep, penetrating chill that has seeped through layers of felt and sheepskin during the night. The air inside your ger, the circular felt tent that is your home, is thick with the breath of sleeping family members, the faint warmth of bodies pressed close together for survival. You lie still for a moment, reluctant to leave the shared warmth beneath thick wool blankets. Through the small smoke hole at the center of the tent's roof, you can see a patch of sky transitioning from black to deep blue. The wind, ever present, causes the felt walls to shift slightly, a sound so constant it has become part of the landscape of your consciousness. This is spring. You have survived another winter. Not everyone did. 2 families in your encampment lost members when the coldest months brought what your people call Jude a winter, so severe that livestock perish in vast numbers, and with them, the humans who depend upon them. The memory of those losses is fresh, carried in the hollow eyes of the bereaved and the reduced number of animals grazing near your camp. Your family's ger sits in a small cluster of perhaps 8 similar dwellings, positioned in a shallow depression that offers minimal protection from the wind. Around you, scattered across the visible landscape, are the animals upon which your entire existence depends. Sheep with thick, dirty wool, goats with their distinctive curved horns, cattle moving slowly, chewing methodically, and horses always horses, standing alert even in the pre-dawn darkness, their ears swiveling toward sounds you cannot yet perceive. The felt walls of your home are thick, made from wool that has been beaten, wetted, and compressed until it forms an insulating layer. The structure sits upon a collapsible wooden lattice frame, ingeniously designed to fold flat for transport. This portability is not a convenience. It is a necessity. Your life is defined by movement. You rise, finally, the cold air shocking against your skin as you emerge from beneath the blankets. Your breath becomes immediately visible. You dress quickly in layers, undergarments of wool, outer garments of leather, and more wool, boots lined with felt. Your clothing smells of smoke, of animal fat, of sweat and milk, and the particular odor of sheep. These smells are so familiar they register only when absent. The fire pit at the center of the ger has gone cold during the night. Its blackened stones sit in a circle, surrounded by a thin layer of ash. You will need to rebuild it, but first, there are animals to tend. There are always animals to tend. Their needs structure every hour of your existence. You step outside into the blue-gray light of approaching dawn. The wind immediately finds every gap in your clothing. This wind is a constant companion on the steppes, sometimes a gentle presence, often a howling force that makes conversation impossible and shapes every tree into a permanent, windswept lean. Today it is moderate, carrying the scent of distant grass and the faint, earthy smell of the animals. The landscape stretches away in all directions, a rolling expanse of grassland broken by occasional rocky outcrops. There are no landmarks as you might understand them. No roads, no fences, no permanent structures of any kind visible on the horizon. Navigation across these lands requires intimate knowledge of subtle features, the shape of distant hills, the pattern of vegetation, the position of stars. You possess this knowledge as deeply as the knowledge of your own family's faces. The horses are your first concern, always the horses. A Mongol without horses is a Mongol without identity, without nobility, without wealth. Your family maintains perhaps 12 horses, though the number fluctuates with births, deaths, and the occasional trade. These animals are small by the standards of horses bred in warmer lands, sturdy, thick-necked creatures with shaggy coats and an almost supernatural endurance. You approach them now, moving slowly, speaking in low tones. The horses know you, but they are not domesticated in the way you might imagine domestic animals. They retain a wildness, a readiness to flee that makes them both challenging and invaluable. Your father taught you to ride before you could walk steadily, strapping you to a horse's back as a toddler. The motion of a cantering horse is as natural to you as walking. Among the marais, you identify the several that will be milked this morning. The fermented marais milk arag is a staple of your diet, a slightly alcoholic, sour beverage that provides both nutrition and hydration. You carry a leather bucket, approaching the first marais carefully. She sidesteps, but your practiced hands and soothing sounds calm her. The milking is a skill acquired over years, your cold fingers working quickly in the dawn chill. The milk flows in thin streams, accumulating slowly in the bucket. The marais' warmth radiates against your hands and face. You milk 4 marais in succession, a process that takes nearly an hour. By the time you finish, full dawn has arrived, and other members of your family have emerged from the gare. Your mother has rekindled the fire, using a precious supply of dried animal dung as fuel. Wood is scarce on the steppes, reserved for the structural elements of the gare itself, and for special occasions. The dung, collected constantly throughout the year and left to dry, burns with a distinctive smell, not unpleasant when you have known nothing else, providing adequate heat and a steady flame for cooking. Breakfast is simple: dried meat, chewy and heavily salted. A yogurt-like substance made from yesterday's milk. A piece of hardened cheese that you gnaw slowly. There are no vegetables. The growing season on the steppes is brief, the soil thin, and cultivation requires staying in one place, a luxury your way of life cannot afford. Occasionally, when you camp near trading outposts, your family might acquire small quantities of grain or dried fruits, but these are rare treats, not staples. The diet is almost entirely animal-based. Meat, primarily mutton, sometimes beef, occasionally horse meat when an animal must be slaughtered. Dairy in numerous forms: fresh milk, fermented milk, yogurt, cheese, dried curds. This diet provides adequate sustenance for the physical demands of your life, but it offers no variety, no pleasure in eating beyond the satisfaction of hunger. Meals are functional, consumed quickly, rarely discussed. After eating, the day's work begins in earnest. Today, like most days, centers on the animals. The sheep must be checked, their condition assessed. Lambs born this spring must be counted and observed for signs of weakness or disease. The goats, more independent than the sheep, still require supervision to ensure they don't wander too far from the camp. The cattle, slow-moving and placid, need to be guided toward the better grazing areas. You work alongside your siblings, your parents, your extended family members who share this encampment. Conversation is sparse. Everyone knows their tasks. The work has been the same for generations, passed down not through instruction, but through observation and participation from earliest childhood. By mid-morning, your uncle rides into camp on his favorite gelding. He has been scouting the surrounding area, checking the condition of the pastures to the east. He dismounts, his legs slightly bowed from a lifetime on horseback, and joins the men of the family near the fire. His news is not encouraging. The grasses in the lowlands are already showing signs of drought stress. The spring rains were lighter than hoped, and the heat of summer will quickly exhaust what little growth has occurred. This means the family will need to move sooner than planned, seeking higher pastures where snowmelt might still provide moisture. This decision, when to move, where to go, is perhaps the most critical calculation your family makes. Move too soon, and you abandon viable grazing. Move too late, and the animals weaken, become vulnerable to disease, produce less milk. The timing must account for the current condition of local pastures, the predicted weather, the movements of other family groups who might compete for the same grazing lands, and the animal's ability to undertake the journey itself. Your father and uncles discuss the matter in low voices, considering factors accumulated over decades of experience. There is no written record to consult, no map to reference. The knowledge exists entirely in memory and in the collective wisdom of the group. While the men deliberate, your mother and aunts begin the work that never truly ends, processing the milk into its various forms. Some milk is poured into large leather bags, where it will ferment over the coming days, stirred occasionally, developing the characteristic sourness of arag. Some is heated in copper pots over the dung fire, separating into curds and whey. The curds will be pressed and dried, creating a hard cheese that can be stored for months, providing food security during the lean times. You watch your mother work, her hands moving with the efficiency of long practice. She is younger than her weathered appearance suggests. Life on the steppes ages people quickly. The constant exposure to sun and wind carves deep lines into faces. The physical labor bends backs and gnarls fingers. The uncertainty and periodic deprivation leave their marks in ways both visible and invisible. She does not complain. Complaining serves no purpose. The conditions of her life were determined at birth, as unchangeable as the weather or the seasons. She knows no other way, imagines no alternative. Her existence is defined by work, by survival, by the endless repetition of tasks necessary to maintain life in an unforgiving environment. By afternoon, the decision is made. The family will move in 3 days' time. This announcement sets in motion a familiar sequence of preparations. Every possession must be evaluated. What is essential? What can be abandoned? The ger itself will be disassembled, its felt coverings rolled, its wooden frame collapsed and loaded onto the backs of oxen or tied to crude sleds pulled by horses. Cooking pots, leather bags, sleeping blankets, tools, rope, spare felt, dried food, all must be packed efficiently. You have moved like this twice already this year. In late winter, descending from the hills where the family had sheltered during the worst months. In early spring, shifting to new pastures as the snows melted. This will be the third move, but certainly not the last. By year's end, your family will have relocated perhaps 6 or 7 times, following an ancient pattern across the landscape, seeking always the balance between available grazing and the animal's needs. The afternoon stretches on. You are sent with the younger children to collect more dung for fuel, wandering among the grazing animals with woven baskets, picking up the dried droppings and carrying them back to camp. It is tedious work, but necessary. The supply must be constantly replenished. Without fuel, there is no fire. Without fire, there is no way to ward off the cold or prepare food. As you work, you notice clouds building on the western horizon. They are dark, heavy with potential rain. Your father notices too, and makes a comment about the timing. Rain now would help the grasses, might even delay the need to move. But rain can also bring danger flash flooding in the low areas, dangerous conditions for travel, illness if people become too wet and cold. You have learned that weather on the steppes is both salvation and threat. The same rain that feeds the grass can destroy an encampment. The same winter snow that provides spring melt can bring the Jude that kills half your herd. Nothing is simple. Everything is contingent. Evening arrives with a gradual dimming of light. The promised rain has not yet arrived, though the air feels heavy with moisture. The animals are brought closer to camp for the night. Your father and uncles will take turns through the darkness, watching over the herd, guarding against the wolves that howl in the distance, and the raiders from rival groups who might attempt to steal animals under cover of darkness. This threat from other human groups is as constant as the wind. The steppes are vast, but resources are limited. Grazing lands, water sources, and animal herds are worth fighting for. Your family maintains relationships with some nearby groups, tenuous alliances based on kinship or mutual benefit. But there are others, families from different clans or tribes, who are viewed with suspicion and sometimes open hostility. You have heard stories of raids, of animals stolen, of violence and deaths. These stories are told matter-of-factly, without drama. They are simply part of the reality of existence. Your father carries weapons, always a bow, arrows, a curved sword. These are tools, like any others, necessary for survival in a world where power is the primary determinant of security. Inside the gare, as darkness falls, the family gathers around the fire. The felt walls glow faintly from the firelight. Outside, the wind has picked up and the first drops of rain begin to fall, a gentle pattering against the felt roof. The temperature inside is barely warmer than outside, but the sense of enclosure, of family gathered together, provides its own form of comfort. Your grandmother, ancient and wrinkled, her back permanently bent, begins to tell a story. It is one you have heard many times, a tale of a great ancestor who single-handedly defended the family's horses against a pack of wolves. The details never vary. The story is not entertainment, exactly. It is transmission of identity, of values, of the qualities that ensure survival. You listen with half your attention, the familiar narrative washing over you like the sound of the rain. Your younger siblings listen more intently, their eyes reflecting the firelight. They are learning, as you once learned, what it means to be part of this family, this group, this way of life. The meal that evening is similar to breakfast. Meat, berry, irag passed around in a wooden bowl, each person drinking in turn. The slight alcohol content warms you from within, a small pleasure in a life largely devoid of luxuries. As the night deepens, family members gradually settle into their sleeping areas around the perimeter of the gare. The fire is banked, but not extinguished, its coals providing minimal warmth through the night. You wrap yourself in felts and wool, pressing close to your siblings for warmth, listening to the rain on the roof and the wind in the grass. You think briefly about the coming move, about the work it will require, about the uncertainty of finding adequate grazing. These thoughts are fleeting, not urgent. Worry serves no purpose. Tomorrow will bring its own demands. The rhythm of your life continues, unchanging and inevitable, shaped by forces beyond your control or even your full comprehension. The seasons will turn. Winter will come again, bringing its test of survival. Animals will be born and will die. Families will move endlessly across the grasslands, following patterns established over centuries. This is the way things have always been. This is the way things will always be. Or so it seems, here in the 12th century, when the world beyond the steppes feels impossibly distant, when the rhythm of nomadic life appears eternal and unchanging. But change is coming. In other parts of these vast grasslands, a child has been born who will transform everything. The scattered tribes, the endless cycle of raids and counter-raids, the precarious existence of small family groups, all of this will soon be swept up in something larger, something unprecedented. But tonight, you do not know this. Tonight, you are simply a herder, one among countless thousands living this same life. You sleep fitfully, as always, waking periodically to adjust your position, to pull the blankets tighter, to listen to the sounds of the night. The rain continues, steady and soft, soaking into the thirsty earth, feeding the grasses upon which everything depends. And in the darkness, the horses stand vigilant, their eyes reflecting what little light escapes from the smoke holes of the sleeping gears. The wind moves through their manes. The steppes stretch away into infinity. And life, hard and uncertain and beautiful in its own stark way, continues its ancient patterns. The transition from scattered family groups to unified force begins not with grand declarations or dramatic moments, but with the birth of a single child in circumstances unremarkable for their time. The year is uncertain, perhaps 1162, perhaps a few years earlier or later. The location is near the Anan River, in the northern reaches of the Mongolian plateau, a landscape much like the one we have just explored. The child is named Temujin. According to the chronicle known as the Secret History of the Mongols, he emerges from the womb clutching a blood clot in his small fist, a sign that some interpret as portentous, though such interpretations are always easier in retrospect. At the moment of birth, he is simply another infant born into the nomadic life, another mouth to feed, another potential herder or warrior for his clan. His father, Yasuge, is a minor chieftain of the Borjigan clan. This grants the family a degree of status, but not security. The political landscape of the Mongolian steppes in the 12th century is fragmented, consisting of dozens of tribes and sub-tribes, their relationships defined by temporary alliances, ancient grudges, and competition for resources. Yasuge has enemies, as all leaders do. The Tatars, a neighboring group, harbor particular animosity toward him for past conflicts. Temujin's childhood is difficult, though perhaps not unusually so for his time and place. He has brothers Kasar, Hakyan, Tamuj, and a sister, Temulin, as well as two half-brothers from his father's other wife. The family lives the nomadic existence we have already examined, moving with the seasons, tending animals, surviving. When Temujin is approximately 9 years old, his father makes arrangements for his future marriage. This is customary, a way of forging alliances between families and clans. Yasuge travels with his son to the camp of Dae-Sechin, whose daughter Bert is deemed a suitable match. The arrangement is made. Temujin is left with his future in-laws, expected to serve the household until he reaches marriageable age at 12. It is on the return journey that Yasuge's past catches him. He encounters members of the Tatar tribe, who recognize him and invite him to share a meal, a gesture of apparent reconciliation. The hospitality is false. The food or drink is poisoned. Yasuge dies within days of returning home, his life ended by enemies who remembered old grievances. Temujin, upon learning of his father's death, returns to his family. He is perhaps 10 years old, thrust suddenly into the role of clan leader by virtue of being the eldest son of his father's primary wife. But the clan does not accept his leadership. He is too young, untested, the son of a man whose protection has been removed by death. The clan abandons Temujin's family, driving them away from the communal camp, leaving them to survive alone. Imagine this abandonment. The mother, Holan, suddenly responsible for feeding and protecting multiple children without the support of the larger group. The family that had known relative security, if not comfort, now reduced to the most precarious existence on the steppes. They survive, but barely. Wild fruits gathered during brief summer abundance. The carcasses of animals found dead. Small game marmots and other rodents hunted by Temujin and his brothers. The constant threat of starvation. The vulnerability to weather, to predators, to human raiders. During these years of hardship, tensions within the family itself become dangerous. Temujin's older half-brother, Begder, begins to assert authority, claiming leadership by virtue of age. There are conflicts over food, over resources, over the future. The resentment builds until, during one hunting expedition, it erupts into violence. Temujin and his full brother Kasar killed Begder, shooting him with arrows. The historical sources do not dwell on the emotional dimensions of this fratricide. It is reported as fact, as a necessary action within the brutal logic of survival and power. Temujin's mother reportedly beats him for the killing, mourning one son while recognizing that another has demonstrated the ruthlessness necessary for leadership. The family continues its isolated existence. Temujin grows into adolescence, hardened by deprivation, learning lessons about power and loyalty that will shape everything he later becomes. He understands, in a way that privileged youths cannot, the fragility of security, the importance of absolute loyalty, the consequences of weakness. When he is perhaps 16 or 17, his vulnerability is again exposed. A raiding party from the Tayashiyad tribe, former allies of his father, captures him. He is enslaved, fitted with a kang, a wooden collar or portable stocks that prevents escape and marks him as a captive. He is held in a gare, guarded, his future uncertain. Enslavement on the steppes can mean death or lifetime servitude, or sale to distant peoples. It is a fate that erases identity, reduces a person to property. But Temujin escapes. The details suggest both luck and resourcefulness. A sympathetic guard, during a feast night when attention is lax, allows or assists his flight. Temujin hides in a river, submerging himself in cold water, breathing through reeds perhaps, evading searchers. He emerges not only free, but with a reputation. The escape demonstrates courage, cleverness, and extraordinary will. This reputation begins to attract followers. Jelm and Baorku, young men who recognize something compelling in the escaped slave, join him. These early companions will remain loyal throughout Temujin's rise, eventually becoming generals in his armies. The pattern is established. Temujin inspires deep loyalty in those who serve him, binding them to his cause not merely through obligation, but through personal connection and shared struggle. In his late teens or early 20s, Temujin claims his promised bride. Bert joins him, bringing a dowry, providing the basis for a household. But the couple's early months together are interrupted by another raid. Bert is kidnapped by the Merkid tribe, an act of revenge for an old slight Temujin's father had once stolen Holland from a Merkid warrior. Bert is taken, held for months, and the sources suggest she is given as wife to a Merkid warrior during her captivity. This loss galvanizes Temujin's transformation from survivor to leader. He cannot rescue Bert alone. He needs allies, warriors, resources. He seeks out Togrul, a powerful Khan who had been his father's blood brother, invoking that old bond and asking for aid. More significantly, he reconnects with Jamuka, a childhood friend, forming an alliance that pools their followers and resources. Together, Temujin, Jamuka, and Togrul's forces attack the Merkid. They recover Bert, along with plunder and captives. The campaign succeeds, and Temujin's reputation grows. He is no longer merely a survivor. He is a warrior, a leader capable of organizing violence for specific ends. The relationship between Temujin and Jamuka is complex. They are friends, perhaps even sworn brothers in the Mongol tradition of Anda. But they are also rivals, representing different visions for Mongol society. Jamuka is aristocratic, favoring the traditional clan hierarchies. Temujin, having experienced abandonment and having risen from nothing, builds his following on merit and loyalty rather than birth. He accepts followers from any clan, even from enemy tribes, judging them by competence rather than lineage. The friendship sours gradually, strained by competition for followers and differing philosophies. Eventually, around 1201, the rupture becomes open conflict. Jamuka is elected Khan by a coalition of tribes threatened by Temujin's growing power. The two former friends face each other in battle. The warfare between Mongol groups during this period is brutal but not yet genocidal. Raids, ambushes, pitched battles on the open steppe. Captured warriors are sometimes integrated into the victor's forces, sometimes executed, sometimes enslaved. The violence is personal, conducted at close range with bow, sword, and lance. Bodies fall onto the grass. Blood soaks into the earth that provides such meager sustenance. The survivors continue, because there is no alternative but continuation. Temujin does not win every battle. He suffers defeats, setbacks, periods of retreat and consolidation. But he demonstrates a crucial quality. He learns from each encounter, adapts his strategies, and never allows defeat to become final. After losing battles, he regroups, attracts new followers, and returns stronger. Throughout these years of warfare and alliance building, Temujin carefully constructs a new kind of organization. He breaks the traditional clan structure, reorganizing his followers into units based on the decimal system groups of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000 warriors. This allows for coordinated movement and command structure independent of tribal affiliation. A warrior's loyalty shifts from clan to the larger entity, ultimately to Temujin himself. He implements strict discipline. Warriors who loot before a battle is concluded face execution. Those who abandon comrades in combat are punished. Success in battle is rewarded with promotion regardless of birth. The system is meritocratic in a way that the traditional tribal structure never was, and it proves remarkably effective at binding diverse groups into a unified force. By the early years of the 13th century, Temujin has defeated or absorbed most of the major Mongol tribes. The Tatars, the tribe that poisoned his father, are conquered and largely exterminated, with only the young children spared and integrated into Temujin's following. Shamuka is eventually betrayed by his own followers and delivered to Temujin, who orders his death, but grants him the honor of execution without bloodshed, reportedly by breaking his back. In 1206, a great assembly, a Kurultai, is convened. The leaders and warriors of the unified Mongol tribes gather in the sacred area near the Anan River. There, in recognition of what Temujin has accomplished, they bestow upon him a new title, Chinggis Khan, meaning universal ruler, or Khan of all between the oceans. Temujin, the abandoned child, the escaped slave, the persistent warrior, becomes Genghis Khan, supreme leader of a unified people. The achievement is extraordinary. The Mongolian plateau, 4 times the size of France, home to dozens of tribes with centuries of mutual hostility, has been brought under single authority. This alone would secure Genghis Khan's place in history. But unification is merely the foundation for what follows. A unified Mongol nation needs direction, purpose, and resources. The steppe provides space, but limited wealth. Genghis Khan looks outward, toward the sedentary civilizations that border the Mongol lands. To the south lies China, fragmented into multiple kingdoms. To the west lie the kingdoms of Central Asia, wealthy from trade along the Silk Road. In 1209, Genghis Khan leads a campaign against the Western Shu, a kingdom occupying the northwestern region of modern China. It is a testing raid, assessing Mongol capabilities against fortified cities, establishing dominance over a border state. The Western Shaya submit, agreeing to pay tribute and provide troops for future campaigns. Emboldened by this success, Genghis Khan turns his attention to the Jin dynasty, which controls northern China. This is a far more formidable opponent, a wealthy, populous kingdom with professional armies, fortified cities, and sophisticated administration. The campaign begins in 1211 with a Kurultai to plan the invasion, followed by attacks in May of that year. The Mongol approach is methodical and devastating. Forces move in 3 columns, penetrating Jin defenses through mountain passes. Rather than immediately besieging cities, the Mongols conduct a shevoki, a systematic campaign of plunder and destruction across the countryside. Villages burn. Crops are destroyed. The rural population is terrorized, depriving the Jin dynasty of tax revenue, food supplies, and popular legitimacy. The Jin armies, trained for different styles of warfare, struggle to counter the Mongol tactics. The Mongol cavalry moves too quickly, strikes from unexpected directions, refuses to be pinned down for set-piece battles. When Jin forces pursue, they often find themselves ambushed or led into traps. The campaign drags on for years. Cities that resist are besieged using techniques learned from Chinese engineers who defect to the Mongol side. In 1215, the Jin capital, Zhongdu, near modern Beijing, falls to Mongol forces. The city is sacked, its wealth plundered, its population subjected to the consequences of resistance. Estimates of casualties during the Jin War run into the millions, though precise numbers are impossible to determine and likely inflated. While the war against the Jin continues, Genghis Khan's General Jebe campaigns westward, conquering the Karakutai, a Central Asian kingdom. This brings the Mongol Empire to the borders of Khwarezm, a wealthy Islamic sultanate controlling much of modern-day Iran, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. Initially, Genghis Khan seeks trade relations rather than conquest. He sends a caravan of Muslim merchants who serve as his subjects, carrying goods and diplomatic messages, proposing peaceful commerce between the two empires. The caravan reaches the city of Otrar on the northeastern frontier of Khwarezm, where the governor, In-ul-Haq, makes a fateful decision. He accuses the merchants of being spies, confiscates their goods, and executes them. Genghis Khan responds with diplomatic restraint initially, sending ambassadors to the Khwarezm Shah, Muhammad II, demanding that In-ul-Haq be punished for killing Mongol subjects. The Shah, either underestimating Mongol power or acting on poor counsel, refuses. He executes one of the ambassadors and humiliates the others, sending them back with their beards shaved, a profound insult in the cultural context. This rejection of diplomatic resolution determines the fate of Khwarezm. In 1219, Genghis Khan mobilizes his forces and invades. The campaign that follows is among the most destructive in human history. City after city falls to Mongol forces. Bukhara, a center of Islamic learning and culture. Samarkand, one of the jewels of Central Asia. Urgench, the Khwarezm capital. Each city that resists faces systematic devastation. The populations are divided, craftsmen and skilled workers are spared and sent east to serve the Mongol Empire. The rest face death or enslavement. The scale of destruction is difficult to comprehend. Some cities are so thoroughly demolished that they never fully recover. Irrigation systems built over centuries are destroyed, leading to agricultural collapse. The death toll estimates range wildly, from 2 million to 15 million, reflecting both the genuine catastrophe and the limitations of historical records. The Khwarezm Shah flees before the advancing Mongols, dying in poverty on an island in the Caspian Sea. His son continues resistance for several more years, but is eventually hunted down and killed. By 1221, Khwarezm has effectively ceased to exist as an independent entity, its territories absorbed into the expanding Mongol realm. The conquest of Khwarezm establishes patterns that will characterize Mongol expansion: sophisticated intelligence gathering, rapid mobility, tactical flexibility, willingness to adopt foreign technologies and expertise, and an approach to resistance that makes submission far more attractive than defiance. Cities that surrender peacefully are often left largely intact, their populations spared, their administration left in place under Mongol oversight. Cities that resist face complete destruction, their fate serving as warning to others. Between campaigns, Genghis Khan returns to Mongolia, administering his growing empire. He establishes legal codes, appoints administrators, organizes the distribution of conquered lands among his sons and generals, and continues refining the military and administrative systems that allow a nomadic people to govern sedentary civilizations. In 1223, after securing Central Asia, Genghis Khan returns his attention to the Jin dynasty, resuming the conquest of northern China. The war continues, grinding and brutal, wearing down Jin resistance through attrition and systematic pressure. The final years of Genghis Khan's life see him campaigning against the Western Shui, who had failed to provide promised military support for his wars. During this campaign, in 1227, Genghis Khan dies. The circumstances are uncertain, perhaps from injuries sustained in a fall from a horse, perhaps from illness. He is approximately 65 years old, though exact age is uncertain given the disputed birth year. His body is returned to Mongolia and buried in an unmarked location, possibly near the sacred mountain Burkhan Khaldun, where he had sought refuge during his years of struggle. The burial site has never been definitively found, kept secret according to Mongol tradition, allowing the founder of the empire to rest undisturbed. The empire Genghis Khan leaves behind is vast, stretching from the Pacific coast to the Caspian Sea, from Siberian forests to the borders of India. It is the largest contiguous land empire in human history, forged in a single generation by a man who began life as an outcast child. The transformation is complete. Temujin, abandoned by his clan, enslaved by enemies, forced to survive on wild roots and small game, has become Genghis Khan, universal ruler, the man who united the Mongol tribes and turned them outward to reshape the world. The scattered herders we encountered in Segment 1, living their precarious existence on the steppes, have become the most feared military force on the planet, their way of life weaponized and directed by singular vision and relentless will. And yet, in another sense, nothing fundamental has changed. The Mongol warriors are still nomads at heart, still dependent on horses and mobility, still shaped by the harsh environment that forged them. The empires they conquer provide wealth and resources, but the Mongol identity remains rooted in the steppes, in the felt tents, in the rhythms of pastoral life. This tension between nomadic origin and imperial ambition will define the Mongol Empire for generations to come. The story continues. The empire Genghis Khan created will expand further under his successors, reaching even more distant lands, adapting, transforming, and eventually fragmenting. But the foundation is laid. The scattered tribes are unified. The pattern is established, and history has been irrevocably altered by the will of one man who refused to accept the limitations of his birth. Let us turn now from the life of one man to the system he created. The transformation of scattered nomadic tribes into history's most effective military force is not a matter of individual heroism or supernatural intervention. It is rather the result of specific choices, particular technologies, and the systematic application of lessons learned through generations of steppe warfare, now directed by centralized command. Imagine standing on a hillside overlooking a battlefield in the early 13th century. You are observing a Mongol army preparing for engagement. What you see may not initially appear impressive by the standards of the sedentary civilizations. There are no elaborate formations of armored knights, no massive siege towers being wheeled forward, no phalanxes of infantry with gleaming spears. Instead, you see thousands of horsemen arranged in loose groupings, their appearance almost casual, their equipment seemingly simple. But this simplicity is deceptive. Everything about Mongol military organization represents centuries of refinement, adapted perfectly to the conditions of their existence and weaponized with extraordinary effectiveness. At the heart of Mongol military power lies a piece of technology, the composite bow. This weapon is not carved from a single piece of wood like the longbows of English yeomen. It is constructed from multiple material strips of wood forming the core, layers of animal horn on the belly facing the archer, and sinew from animal tendons on the back. These materials are bonded together with animal glue and wrapped in birch bark or leather for protection. The construction process takes months, even years. The different materials must be carefully prepared, shaped, and allowed to cure. Horn provides compression strength. Sinew offers tensile strength. Wood connects and balances these opposing forces. The result is a bow shorter than European equivalents, typically between 1.2 and 1.4 meters, in length yet capable of draw weights reaching 160 pounds. This combination of compact size and extraordinary power makes the bow ideal for use from horseback. A Mongol warrior can draw, aim, and loose arrows while his horse gallops at full speed, maintaining accuracy at ranges up to 200 or 300 meters. The recurved shape, with tips that curve away from the archer when the bow is strung, stores additional energy, launching arrows with penetrating force sufficient to pierce armor at close range. Each warrior carries not one bow, but multiple, at least two, often three along, with several quivers containing 60 or more arrows. The arrows themselves are specialized. Some have light, sharp points for use against unarmored targets or horses. Others feature heavy, armor-piercing heads designed to penetrate mail and plate. Some carry whistling attachments, creating an eerie sound as they fly, useful for signaling or for psychological effect. The mastery required to use these weapons effectively from horseback represents a lifetime of training. Mongol children begin learning archery almost as soon as they can walk, shooting at targets while being led on ponies. By adolescence, they can shoot accurately while riding at speed, loosing arrows forward, to the sides, and even behind them without breaking the horse's stride. This skill, developed through necessity in hunting and intertribal warfare, becomes devastating when applied to conquest. The effectiveness of Mongol archery is amplified by the military organization Genghis Khan imposed. The traditional tribal structure, with loyalty flowing to clan leaders and family groups, is replaced by the decimal system. Warriors are organized into units of 10, called arban. 10 arban form a jagan of 100, 10 jagan form a mingen of 1,000, and 10 mingen form a taman of 10,000. This structure transcends tribal affiliations. Warriors from different clans, even from formerly hostile tribes, serve together in the same units. Loyalty is directed upward through the command structure, ultimately to the Khan himself. Commanders are appointed based on competence and loyalty rather than birth. A man of low origin who demonstrates tactical skill can rise to command thousands. This meritocratic principle, radical in societies organized around hereditary aristocracy, ensures that leadership positions are filled by capable individuals. The discipline within these units is absolute. Orders are communicated through a system of flags and relay riders, allowing coordinated movements across vast distances. A taman can divide into smaller units, execute independent maneuvers, and reassemble according to predetermined signals. This flexibility allows Mongol forces to adapt to changing battlefield conditions, to exploit unexpected opportunities, to avoid encirclement. Violations of discipline meet swift punishment. A warrior who flees from battle endangers not only himself, but his entire unit. The penalty is death. A warrior who stops to loot before the battle undermines the tactical plan. The penalty is death. This severity creates armies that function with machine-like reliability, where individual impulse is subordinated to collective effectiveness. The Mongol warrior's mobility derives from his horses. Each warrior maintains a string of perhaps 4 or 5 animals. This allows him to rotate mounts, ensuring fresh horses are always available. The Mongol horse, as we have seen, is small but extraordinarily hardy, capable of surviving on sparse grazing, requiring no grain or special care. A Mongol army can cover distances that immobilize conventional forces. 50 miles in a day is routine. 100 miles in a day, when necessary, is achievable. This mobility fundamentally alters the nature of warfare. A Mongol army can appear where it is not expected, attack before defenses are prepared, and disappear before reinforcements arrive. Enemy forces marching to engage the Mongols often find empty landscape the nomadic warriors have moved, circled around, struck elsewhere. The psychological impact of this unpredictability is as valuable as the tactical advantage. The warriors travel light. They carry dried meat and dried milk curds, food that requires no cooking and spoils slowly. They can survive for days on these rations, supplemented by whatever they acquire through foraging or plunder. In extremity, they practice a technique documented with both fascination and horror by observers. They open a vein in a horse's neck, drink a small quantity of blood for sustenance, then seal the wound and continue riding. The horse survives, the warrior is sustained, and the army maintains its mobility. Among the many tactics employed by Mongol commanders, the feigned retreat is perhaps the most effective and the most frequently used. The pattern is consistent. Mongol forces engage an enemy, loose volleys of arrows, then suddenly turn and flee. To opposing commanders, this appears to be a rout the barbarians breaking under pressure, vulnerable to pursuit and destruction. The pursuit begins. Enemy cavalry charges forward, eager to complete the victory. Enemy infantry advances, maintaining cohesion initially, but gradually becoming disordered as the chase continues. The Mongols flee convincingly, staying just ahead of their pursuers, occasionally turning to loose more arrows, maintaining the appearance of panic. Then, when the pursuing force has been drawn far enough from their starting position, far enough from support and secure ground, the Mongols wheel about. Fresh units that had been hidden or held in reserve appear on the flanks. The fleeing warriors turn and attack. The pursuers, now disordered and fatigued, find themselves encircled, attacked from multiple directions by warriors who demonstrate no sign of the panic they had just displayed. The tactic works repeatedly. Commanders who have heard of the feigned retreat still fall victim to it, unable to resist the apparent opportunity for easy victory. The pressure on soldiers under arrow fire, the frustration of seeing an enemy just out of reach, the competitive instinct to be first in the pursuit, all these psychological factors override caution and discipline. Not every feigned retreat leads to immediate encirclement. Sometimes the Mongols probe enemy formations, testing their cohesion and discipline. If the enemy holds steady, refusing to break ranks or pursue, the Mongols withdraw, try different approaches, wait for better opportunities. There is no shame in this patient approach, no requirement for glorious frontal charges. Victory is the only measure, however achieved. The nomadic way of warfare excels on open ground, where mobility and archery provide decisive advantages. But empires are not conquered solely on battlefields. They are conquered by taking cities, by reducing fortifications, by breaking the will of populations sheltered behind walls. Initially, the Mongols lack expertise in siege warfare. The first encounters with Chinese fortified cities present challenges. Walls cannot be taken by cavalry charges. Gates do not yield to arrows. The Mongols could bypass cities, plundering the surrounding countryside. But this leaves secure bases from which enemies can operate. Trade routes they cannot fully control. Populations they cannot fully subjugate. The solution demonstrates a crucial Mongol characteristic: pragmatic adoption of foreign expertise. Chinese engineers, either captured or voluntarily defecting to the Mongol side, bring knowledge of siege engines, artillery, and mining techniques. The Mongols learn rapidly, adapting these technologies to their purposes. Catapults are constructed, hurling stones against walls or over them, destroying buildings and killing defenders. The Mongols learn to use incendiary devices, bombs filled with gunpowder and shrapnel, precursors to later explosives, launched into cities to spread fire and panic. They employ battering rams, siege towers, and undermining tunneling beneath walls to cause collapse. The siege of Ryazan, a Russian city encountered during Western campaigns, falls in just 5 days, overwhelmed by this combination of traditional Mongol tactics and adopted Chinese siege technology. Cities that might have held out for months or years against conventional medieval armies find their defenses inadequate against an enemy that continuously adapts and innovates. Mongol military success rests also on sophisticated intelligence gathering. Before major campaigns, the Mongols deploy merchants, travelers, and spies into target regions. These agents map terrain, identify resources, assess military capabilities, and cultivate contacts with potential collaborators. By the time Mongol armies arrive, commanders already possess detailed knowledge of the areas they will traverse and the enemies they will face. This intelligence informs tactical decisions. Mongol columns take routes that avoid strong points, striking instead at vulnerable targets. They exploit political divisions within enemy states, offering terms to factions willing to betray their rulers. They identify and eliminate enemy scouts and messengers, maintaining operational security while denying information to their opponents. The combination of intelligence and mobility creates a fog of war that disproportionately affects Mongol enemies. Enemy commanders often do not know where Mongol forces are, how large they are, or what their objectives might be. Meanwhile, Mongol commanders maintain relatively clear understanding of enemy positions and capabilities. This informational asymmetry provides advantages as significant as any weapon. Perhaps the most distinctive and disturbing aspect of Mongol military practice is the systematic use of terror as a weapon. When cities resist Mongol demands for surrender, the consequences serve as lessons to others. The populations of resistant cities face comprehensive destruction. Buildings are burned, fortifications are demolished. The inhabitants are assembled, divided into categories: skilled craftsmen, separated for deportation, the remainder often put to death. The scale of these massacres is documented by both Mongol and enemy sources, though exact numbers remain uncertain and likely exaggerated. Entire cities are reported as annihilated, with death tolls in the tens or hundreds of thousands. Whether these figures represent literal accuracy or rhetorical emphasis, the fundamental reality is clear: resistance to Mongol conquest brings catastrophic consequences. This approach serves calculated strategic purposes. Word of these destructions spreads rapidly. When Mongol armies approach other cities, the populations remember what happened to those who resisted. Surrender becomes far more attractive. Many cities open their gates without fighting, accepting Mongol terms rather than risking obliteration. This is psychological warfare, deliberate and effective. The Mongols create a reputation for invincibility and ruthlessness that precedes their armies. The fear itself becomes a weapon, reducing resistance before battles occur, conserving Mongol resources and lives while achieving strategic objectives. It is important to note, though difficult to reconcile with moral judgment, that cities surrendering peacefully often fare relatively well under Mongol rule. Their populations are spared, their economies continue functioning. Their religious and cultural practices are generally tolerated. The Mongols, once resistance ends, prove pragmatic administrators, interested in extracting tribute and maintaining order rather than imposing ideological conformity. The binary is stark: resist and face destruction, submit and face reasonable governance. This calculated approach to violence serves imperial objectives while minimizing the total amount of violence necessary for conquest. From the Mongol perspective, this represents efficiency rather than cruelty. As Mongol conquests expand, the armies evolve. Warriors from conquered peoples are integrated into Mongol forces, bringing their own expertise and traditions. Chinese engineers, as we have seen, Persian administrators, Russian cavalry, Tibetan religious figures. The Mongol military becomes increasingly cosmopolitan, united not by ethnicity, but by loyalty to the Khan and adherence to the military system. This integration strengthens rather than weakens Mongol effectiveness. The core remains the Mongol cavalry, with their composite bows and mobility. But supplementary capabilities, siege warfare, administration of conquered territories, diplomatic relations, are provided by specialists from diverse backgrounds. The empire becomes a synthesis of the steppe and the sown, nomadic, and sedentary traditions combined under unified command. The decimal organization facilitates this integration. A unit commander needs competent warriors who follow orders. Their ethnic origin becomes secondary to their effectiveness. Over time, the definition of Mongol shifts from tribal identity to participation in the imperial system. A Chinese engineer working for Mongol armies, a Persian official administering a Mongol province, a Russian soldier serving in a Mongol tumen, all become, in functional terms, part of the Mongol war machine. The system proves extraordinarily durable. For more than a century, from the early 1200s through the early 1300s, Mongol armies remained dominant across Eurasia. They suffer occasional defeats in Vietnam, in Japan, in parts of Eastern Europe, but these setbacks do not fundamentally undermine their military superiority. The combination of mobility, archery, organization, adaptability, and systematic application of violence remains unmatched by any contemporary force. Eventually, of course, the empire fragments. The logistical challenges of governing territories, stretching from Korea to Hungary, prove insurmountable. Succession disputes divide the united realm into separate khanates that gradually develop independent interests. The descendants of the original nomadic conquerors adopt the cultures of their subjects, settling in palaces, losing the skills and hardness that made their ancestors formidable. But for those decades of unified Mongol military dominance, the steppe nomads demonstrate that civilization's advantages in wealth, population, and technology do not guarantee military superiority. A smaller force, properly organized, led, and motivated, employing tactics suited to its strengths and flexible enough to adapt, can overwhelm larger and wealthier opponents. The lessons learned on the Mongolian plateau, the value of mobility, the importance of accurate intelligence, the effectiveness of psychological warfare, the necessity of discipline, and meritocratic command, these lessons reshape military thinking across the medieval world. Enemies studying Mongol tactics begin to adopt elements themselves. Light cavalry becomes more valued. Archery receives greater emphasis. The rigid feudal levies of European warfare begin to give way to more flexible organizations. And in this way, the harsh conditions of the steppes that we explored in Segment 1, the unifying vision of Genghis Khan that we traced in Segment 2, reach their fullest expression in the military system that conquers half the known world. The hardship becomes strength. The mobility becomes power. The adaptation necessary for survival becomes the key to dominance. The Mongol war machine, forged in the crucible of the steppes, tempered through centuries of inter-tribal warfare, directed by centralized command, and applied with systematic ruthlessness to conquest, stands as one of history's most effective military organizations. Its effectiveness rests not on single innovations, but on the synthesis of many elements: technology, organization, tactics, intelligence, psychology, combined with the extraordinary martial culture of a people for whom horsemanship and archery were prerequisites for survival. We move forward now in time, from the campaigns of conquest to the fruits of empire. The year is approximately 1275. The vast territories conquered by Genghis Khan and his successors have been consolidated. Under the rule of his grandson, Kublai Khan, the Mongol Empire has reached its maximum extent, stretching from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe, from Siberian forests to the borders of Southeast Asia. Kublai Khan, fifth great Khan of the Mongol Empire and founder of the Yuan dynasty in China, maintains two capitals. The winter capital is Dadu, known also as Kumbalik, located where modern Beijing now stands. But it is the summer capital that captures the imagination of visitors and becomes legendary Xanadu, or Xiangdu as it is known in the Mongol tongue, situated in the grasslands of Inner Mongolia. Imagine approaching Xanadu in the warm months. You have traveled for weeks across the northern Chinese plains, through cultivated fields and villages, gradually ascending into the grasslands that border the steppes. The landscape begins to feel familiar if you know Mongolia: rolling terrain, vast horizons, the sense of space that the crowded agricultural regions of China cannot provide. And then, Unexpectedly, in this open landscape, you see walls. Not the simple felt enclosures of nomadic camps, but substantial fortifications defining a square area stretching across the land. These are the outer walls of Xanadu, enclosing approximately 12 square miles of land. They are not as imposing as the Great Walls of Chinese cities, but they are permanent, substantial, marking a threshold between the world beyond and the space within. As you approach closer, the city's structure reveals itself. Xanadu is designed in nested squares, each enclosed within the next, creating layers of separation between the public spaces and the most private, sacred areas. The outermost walls enclose what is called the outer city, where most of the population resides: officials, servants, craftsmen, merchants, guards. The buildings here are modest, constructed of mud and boards, arranged along pathways that follow geometric patterns. Within the outer city lies the inner city, separated by another wall 3 to 5 meters high, punctuated by towers at intervals. This brick wall creates another square, smaller but more refined. Entry is controlled. Guards check credentials. Not everyone from the outer city may pass freely into these more exclusive precincts. And within the inner city stands the palace complex itself, built upon raised platforms of earth reinforced with stones and wooden beams, lifting the imperial residence above the surrounding landscape. The architecture blends traditions. There are elements recognizable from Chinese palace design: sweeping roofs with upturned eaves, courtyards arranged according to geomantic principles, ornamental gardens with carefully placed rocks and water features. But there are also Mongol elements: the scale and openness, the accommodation of horses and hunting activities, the prominence given to spaces for feasting and assembly rather than elaborate ritual chambers. Much of what we know about Xanadu comes from a young Venetian merchant who visited during these years. Marco Polo, son of Niccolo and nephew of Matteo, both experienced traders who had previously journeyed to the Mongol court, arrives at Xanadu around 1275. He is approximately 21 years old, impressionable, curious, and destined to serve in Kublai Khan's administration for nearly 2 decades. Marco's account, later written down and circulated throughout Europe, describes a place that seems almost fantastical to his medieval European audience. He writes of marble palaces with gilded and varnished pillars. He describes parks enclosed within the palace grounds, containing forests, meadows, streams, and all manner of game animals maintained for the Khan's hunting pleasure. The palace itself, Marco notes, can be taken apart and transported, in intriguing detail that reflects the Mongol identity even as they build permanent structures. Like the felt dares of the steppes, portable despite being grand. The columns are removable. The walls can be disassembled. This is not merely practical, but symbolic. The Mongols, even when residing in marble halls, maintain their nomadic essence, their ability to move, their refusal to be completely bound to place. The court at Xanadu is extraordinarily diverse. Kublai Khan, in his governance, maintains a deliberate cosmopolitanism. Officials speak multiple languages, Mongolian certainly, but also Chinese, Persian, Turkic dialects, Arabic. The court becomes a meeting place for the various peoples of the empire, a space where Mongols interact with Chinese scholars, where Muslim administrators work alongside Buddhist monks, or Central Asian merchants negotiate with Korean emissaries. This diversity is visible in the people surrounding the Khan. Court attendants come from various ethnic groups. Their different features, clothing, and customs deliberately preserved rather than homogenized. A painting from the period depicting Kublai Khan hunting shows this clearly. The figures around him display varied appearances: darker-skinned Central Asians, lighter-skinned Chinese, the distinctive features of different peoples united in service to the Mongol emperor. The social hierarchy in the Yuan dynasty reflects Mongol priorities and prejudices. At the top are the Mongols themselves, regardless of their specific role or competence. Second are the Simaren, the people with colored eyes, Central Asians, Persians, and others from the western portions of the empire. Third are the northern Chinese, subjects of the old Jin dynasty that the Mongols conquered. At the bottom are the southern Chinese, the former subjects of the Song dynasty that held out longest against Mongol conquest. This stratification determines taxation, legal treatment, and access to office. Each group experiences different methods of taxation. Northern Chinese, taxed according to Jin precedents, Southern Chinese according to Song practices. Each group is judged according to its own legal traditions. Only Chinese are tattooed if convicted of theft, for instance. The system maintains distinctions, preventing full integration, ensuring Mongol dominance, even as the rulers adopt Chinese imperial forms. Life at Xanadu follows rhythms dictated by ceremony and tradition. Kublai Khan maintains both Mongol and Chinese ritual practices, a dual system that acknowledges his position as both Great Khan of the Mongols and Emperor of China. One ceremony particularly captures the blend of cultures and the connection to pastoral origins. Each year, according to Marco Polo's account, 10,000 white horses are maintained for a specific purpose. Their milk is reserved exclusively for the imperial family and for ceremonial offerings. The number 10,000 may be rhetorical exaggeration, but the practice itself reflects genuine Mongol tradition. Mare's milk, the Arag we encountered in segment 1, remains sacred despite all the luxury and sophistication of court life. These white horses graze in parklands within the palace grounds or nearby. Their color marks them as special, associated with purity and divine favor in Mongol shamanic beliefs. The milk collected from them is offered during rituals, poured onto the earth in libations to Tengri, the eternal sky god of Mongol tradition, and to the spirits of ancestors. The shamanic practices continue even as Buddhism gains prominence. Kublai Khan, unlike some of his predecessors, who showed strong preference for particular religions, maintains a studied tolerance. Tibetan Buddhism receives particular patronage. Kublai employs Tibetan lamas as spiritual advisors, supports the construction of Buddhist monasteries, and allows Tibetan influence in court rituals. But Taoist priests also receive support. Muslim scholars are employed in administration. Christian missionaries are granted audiences and permission to preach. This tolerance is not primarily philosophical. It serves practical imperial purposes. Religious communities across the vast empire must be accommodated if order is to be maintained. But there is also genuine Mongol pragmatism. The spirits and gods of all peoples might have power, might offer protection or advantage. Why offend any of them through exclusion? The Great Hall of the palace hosts banquets that express imperial power through abundance and display. The Khan sits elevated, visible to all assembled guests who arrange themselves according to rank and ethnicity. The table service is elaborate vessels of gold and silver, cups carved from jade, plates of fine porcelain. The cuisine represents influences from across the empire. Traditional Mongol dishes: boiled mutton, dried meat, fermented milk products appear, alongside Chinese delicacies, Persian rice dishes, Central Asian bread, and fruits. The court cuisine becomes deliberately international, reflecting the empire's extent and the Khan's dominion over diverse peoples. Kumis, the fermented Mare's milk, is served in golden cups. The drink remains central to Mongol identity and ceremony, despite all the refinements of Chinese imperial culture. Guests drink in succession, following prescribed etiquette that blends Mongol custom with Chinese courtly protocol. Music plays: Mongol throat singing, Chinese string instruments, drums and flutes from various traditions, creating soundscapes that have no precedent in any single culture. The banquets are not merely social occasions, but demonstrations of power. The abundance of food, the quality of service, the presence of officials and nobles from distant provinces, the deference shown by conquered peoples, all serve to reinforce the Khan's position at the center of a vast system. And for those present, the banquets provide opportunity for networking, for observing imperial favor or disfavor, for advancing interests within the complex machinery of court politics. Beyond the palace walls, but within the extensive parklands, lie the hunting grounds that Marco Polo describes with evident fascination. These are not wild spaces, but carefully managed environments, enclosed by walls or natural boundaries, stocked with game deer, boar, various birds maintained for the Khan's recreation. The Mongol passion for hunting, essential for survival on the steppes, becomes formalized ritual at Xanadu. The Khan undertakes elaborate hunting expeditions, not alone, but accompanied by nobles, officials, falconers, and attendants. Marco Polo describes Kublai traveling in a pavilion carried by 4 elephants, the structure lined with gold cloth inside and tiger skins outside. The Khan reclines in comfort, accompanied by favorite wives and 12 prized gerfalcons, watching the landscape pass while others manage the logistics of movement. When birds are spotted cranes or other suitable quarry, the curtain of the pavilion is raised. The gerfalcons are released. The Khan and his companions watch the hunt unfold from elevated comfort, the falcons stooping from height to strike their prey, the long flights visible across the open parkland. Surrounding the Khan's pavilion ride attendants on different breeds of horses, Mongolian horses certainly, but also Akultik from Central Asia and Arabian horses from the West, demonstrating the empire's reach and the Khan's access to the finest bloodlines. Falconers ride with various birds, peregrine falcons, saker falcons, goshawks, even golden eagles used for hunting deer. Each bird requires specific training and handling, and the skilled falconers come from both Mongol and Chinese traditions, their expertise valued and maintained. Mongol women of the imperial clan participate in these hunts, riding alongside the men, demonstrating the persistence of steppe customs where women's roles were less restricted than in Chinese tradition. A painting depicts a woman keeping pace with Kublai Khan during a hunt, positioned prominently, part of the visual center of the composition. At the camp that serves as base for extended hunts, a specific tent is designated as a lost property office. Anyone finding an object must report it here. Failure to do so is considered theft, punishable accordingly. This detail reveals the organization underlying even recreational activities, the administration and justice that follow the Khan everywhere. The luxury and leisure of Xanadu exist because of the systematic exploitation of conquered territories. The Yuan dynasty that Kublai Khan establishes governs China through a bureaucracy that blends Mongol military organization with Chinese administrative traditions. The empire is divided into provinces overseen by officials chosen more for loyalty than competence, though competent administrators are valued when they demonstrate proper deference. The tax system extracts resources from the productive agricultural regions of China, funneling wealth northward to support the court, the military, and the Mongol elite who share in the spoils of conquest. Chinese scholars, despite their low position in the social hierarchy, are employed in administration because literacy and mathematical skills remain essential for governance. They keep records, draft documents, calculate taxes, and maintain the complex systems necessary for empire. But they serve under Mongol supervision. Their traditional avenues to power through civil service examinations constrained or eliminated. Kublai Khan shows interest in technological innovation and infrastructure. He extends and improves the Grand Canal system linking southern and northern China, facilitating the transport of grain and goods. He establishes a postal system using relay stations across the empire, allowing messages and officials to travel with unprecedented speed. Paper money is issued, backed by imperial authority, facilitating commerce and allowing the court to manipulate monetary supply. These administrative innovations demonstrate Mongol pragmatism. Having conquered through military superiority, they maintain dominance through adopting and improving upon the administrative tools of their subjects. The result is more efficient than the decentralized tribal systems of the steppes, but the underlying logic remains Mongol power concentrated in the Khan, loyalty ensured through rewards and punishments, diversity tolerated as long as authority is acknowledged. The Yuan dynasty period sees distinctive artistic developments. Porcelain production continues and evolves, with Mongol court preferences influencing designs. The diverse cultural influences at court Persian, Islamic, Central Asian traditions blending with Chinese practices create a cosmopolitan artistic environment. Blue and white porcelain becomes increasingly prominent during this period, influenced by Islamic artistic traditions that value cobalt blue pigments. Large vessels are produced for Mongol tastes, reflecting the scale and abundance valued by steppe peoples accustomed to scarcity. The designs often feature bold patterns, less delicate than some Song dynasty work, but striking in their confidence and visibility. Drama and literature flourish, though in forms sometimes distinct from classical Chinese traditions. The Yuan dynasty sees the development of Chinese opera, with performances combining music, dance, and narrative in ways that appeal to diverse audiences including the Mongol elite, who may not be fully literate in Chinese classical literature. Painting continues with both Chinese artists working in traditional styles and new approaches reflecting the changed political circumstances. Some artists retreat from court life, painting privately, maintaining classical traditions in resistance to Mongol rule. Others engage with the new patrons, creating works that reflect the hybrid culture of the Yuan court. Through all of this, Kublai Khan positions himself as patron, not merely as conqueror. He supports scholars, artists, and religious figures. He collects books and artifacts. He presents himself as a legitimate Chinese emperor, inheritor of the mandate of heaven, not simply as a foreign ruler imposing his will through force. This cultural project, building legitimacy and acceptance, complements the military and administrative structures that maintain actual control. The luxury of Xanadu exists in stark contrast to both the conditions of ordinary subjects and to the origins of the Mongols themselves. The felt gears of Segment 1, where families struggled to survive harsh winters and move constantly in search of grazing, stand in almost incomprehensible opposition to marble palaces and hunting parks stocked with game. This transformation, accomplished in roughly 70 years from Genghis Khan's unification to Kublai's mature reign, represents one of history's most dramatic social changes. The descendants of nomadic herders have become rulers of the world's most populous and sophisticated civilizations. They dress in silk, eat from golden plates, command armies of millions, and administer territories encompassing perhaps a quarter of humanity. And yet, the connection to origins persists. The white horses and their sacred milk, the hunting with falcons, the preference for camps and mobility, even while maintaining permanent capitals, the pride in horsemanship and archery even as Chinese officials manage the daily details of governance. Kublai Khan, though he spends his summers in Xanadu and winters in Dadu, periodically returns to the deeper steppes, reconnecting with the Mongol heartland and the identity it represents. This duality defines the Yuan dynasty. Too Chinese for traditional Mongols, too Mongol for Chinese subjects. Neither fully one nor the other, but a hybrid sustained by military dominance, administrative efficiency, and the persistent charisma of the family that conquered the world. Imagine evening at Xanadu. The sun descends toward the western horizon, casting long shadows across the grasslands beyond the walls. The palace roofs glow in the reddish light. In the parklands, deer graze peacefully, secure in the knowledge that hunting does not occur at night. The 1,000 white horses stand in their meadows, their coats catching the last sunlight. In the great hall, preparations begin for the evening meal. Servants move through corridors and courtyards, carrying dishes, arranging tables, lighting oil lamps that will illuminate the spaces as darkness deepens. Officials complete their daily work, reviewing documents, conducting final meetings, preparing reports that will be presented to the Khan. Kublai Khan himself, now in his 60s, his beard gray, his body thickened by years of banqueting and reduced physical activity, sits in his private chambers surrounded by a few trusted advisors. They discuss matters of governance, a report of unrest in a distant province, decisions about tax rates, appointments to positions, the endless details of ruling an empire that spans half the known world. The light fades. Stars begin to appear in the darkening sky, the same stars that guided nomadic herders across the steppes for countless generations, now observed from palace windows and garden pavilions. The sounds of the day diminish. The purposeful activity of court life slows. Night comes to Xanadu as it comes everywhere, indifferent to human power and pretension. And in this darkening evening, the temporary nature of all this becomes faintly visible. Kublai Khan will die in 1294, 17 years after Marco Polo first arrived. The Yuan dynasty will persist for several more decades, but tensions between Mongol rulers and Chinese subjects will grow. The dynasty will eventually fall in 1368, swept away by rebellion and the reassertion of Chinese independence under the Ming dynasty. Xanadu itself will be abandoned, its palaces falling into ruin, its parklands returning to grassland, its walls crumbling slowly back into the earth from which they were raised. Future travelers will find only traces foundation stones, fragments of walls, the outlines of vanished splendor barely visible in the landscape. But for now, on this evening in the 1270s or 1280s, Xanadu stands complete. The summer capital functions. The court thrives. The empire extends to horizons that seem limitless. The transformation from nomadic herders to universal rulers appears permanent, inevitable, eternal. The night deepens. Fires are lit for warmth and light. The palace settles into evening routines. Beyond the walls, the grasslands extend into darkness, vast and indifferent. And somewhere in the distance, far from palaces and court ceremonies, there are still families living in felt tents, tending animals, moving with the seasons, continuing the way of life that made the Mongols who they are, hardy, mobile, adaptable survivors of the harshest conditions. Both worlds exist simultaneously, the opulent and the austere, the permanent and the mobile, the achievement and the origin. And in the space between them lies the story we have traced tonight, from scattered herders to unified nation, from survival to conquest, from felt tents to marble halls. We have journeyed tonight across 8 centuries and thousands of miles. We have stood in felt tents on the winter steppes, feeling the bone-chilling cold and the constant vulnerability of nomadic existence. We have traced the rise of Temujin, from abandoned child to Genghis Khan, universal ruler. We have examined the military system that made Mongol armies nearly invincible for a century. And we have walked through the summer palace of Xanadu, witnessing the transformation of nomadic conquerors into imperial administrators. The story of the Mongols is one of extreme hardship, giving rise to extreme adaptation, extreme violence, enabling extreme creation, extreme mobility, allowing extreme expansion. It is a story that demonstrates how environments shape peoples, how individuals can alter history, how systems multiply the effectiveness of human effort, and how success itself transforms and eventually undermines the qualities that enabled it. As you settle deeper into rest now, you might reflect on the distance between that world and yours. The struggles we explored for warmth, for food, for survival itself are removed from your immediate experience by centuries of human progress. The violence we described, while it continues in various forms, does not threaten you tonight. You rest in security that would have seemed miraculous to the herders we encountered in segment 1. And perhaps there is comfort in that distance, in recognizing how much has changed, how different your circumstances are from the harsh realities of medieval existence. The past, with all its struggles and transformations, is complete. It cannot harm you. It exists only as memory, as story, as history told to ease you toward sleep. The Mongol herder moves once more across the grassland, following the same paths his ancestors followed, unaware that his descendants will reshape the world. The wind blows across the steppes, carrying scents of grass and animal in distance. The horses stand vigilant in the darkness, and all of it fades gently into history, into story, into the peaceful darkness of sleep. Rest now, the past is concluded, the stories are told, and you are safe and warm and still.